Well, H1, H2, H3 generally is a temporal element. So Horizon 1 has a certain time frame, Horizon 2 and Horizon 3 is, and that will at least correlate with things that are incremental, adjacent, and transformative. But in general, it can lead to you making some mistakes because you might have something that just takes a really long time, but is a very adjacent move and confuse yourself into thinking you need to manage it in a different way because you categorized it as Horizon 3. So it's not a bad scheme, but I think one of the things that Clay Christensen always looked for is, did you get categories in a way in which there were different things that you need to do with each category? Did it lead to a prescription where there was causality in it? And time will sometimes match, but sometimes won't. Therefore, you just have to be a little bit careful if you use it because it might lead to you making some mistakes.
Yeah, so I basically, entirely agree with Scott that H1, H2, H3 language has always traditionally been framed in the temporal domain. And so, the axes are about time, when in fact, I think as we start to talk about these different types of innovation, the real sort of dimension of difference is risk and the degree to which we have uncertainty and the unknowns and the pieces of the puzzle that we have to manage and work on. And so for me, as long as we are thinking about horizons with respect to risk, then I think it can be very useful. I think it's a very useful organizational shorthand, particularly when people often disagree about, a term like breakthrough and transformation and so on. So sometimes bringing it back to something really simple with numbers, I think can be a useful shared language. But we really do have to get this distinction between time and risk. So I think as long as we're speaking in the risk domain and the risk dimension, not the temporal dimension, we are much less likely to make the sorts of mistakes that Scott talked about.
Yeah, it's that temporal piece. And I think the good thing is that most of the folks who use the shorthand actually don't use it correctly. I mean, they use it to echo your incremental, adjacent, transformational, right? So kind of those sort of three spheres. They don't actually focus on the time. And so I think that's fine. I mean, if you're going to define in your organization as H1 basically close to the core, H2 is a little bit further away, and H3 is transformational or whatever, like we talked about, that's great. If you're going to say by necessity, H1 is a series of months, H2 might be a year or two, H3 is several years, that's a big problem because we know you can MVP H3 things immediately. There's all kinds of things you can do. So I'd say if it's the shorthand and you all define it not according to time, great, that's fine. But if people start saying, well, but it needs to be constrained based on time, I think that's a big problem.